to explore its potential impact, we're joined by Mr. Maher Nicholas Fazli, Director of the EU ASEAN Centre. Mr. Fazli, welcome to Q News. Sir, do you agree that inequality is now as urgent as a threat to climate change?
I'm delighted to join you today. Actually, we just wrapped up the 2025 World Pensions Forum here in London. So I'm jumping into the interview with you just a few minutes later. It's a pleasure to be with you. And today we discussed, with some of the world's leading pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and finance ministers and pensions ministers for the past 2 days here in London. We discussed many themes, including that one, inequality. In our jargon, we call it SDG 1, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which were crafted 7-8 years ago. Ending poverty, ending hunger was supposed to be number one. And then after SDG, Sustainable Development Goal number 1, there was number 2 and number 3 and number 4, 18 of them. And the other Sustainable Development Goals were about climate, right? Climate finance, climate change, the environment, women equality. But poverty, ending poverty and hunger was supposed to be number 1. And we failed. We collectively, the West, the East, the whole world failed at that objective of ending poverty and inequality. Why? Because in the past 7-8 years precisely, inequality has risen, and both in the developed world. So here, Brazil and South Africa cannot really give lessons to the rest of the world, and Spain, the country of Prime Minister, because that article, which was published in the Financial Times today, was co-authored by the president of Brazil, who's hosting the COP30 summit, which is ending today. And there's another government, that of South Africa, which is hosting this G20 summit starting tomorrow morning in South Africa for the first time on African soil. And so that article, they quote together, right, the president of Brazil and the president of South Africa, together with the socialist or social democrat prime minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, was a way of saying, we, the socialists of Europe, we, the left in South Africa and Brazil, we know better. But in reality, it's not true, because the whole world failed. So not only the capitalist right-wing, let's say, governments of Europe or North America failed, because in America and Europe, social inequality has risen dramatically in the past 8 years, but also the so-called global South, like Brazil and South Africa, they were not able to fix it. So that problem is a universal problem. And if we're not able to fix it rapidly, it will morph into social and political upheavals.
Well, the proposal for an international panel on inequality, symbolic step. Is it a symbolic step? Is it a real potential for policy transformation? What's your take on that?
My take on that, I'm a realist, so I don't want to sound cynical. I think it's coming too little and too late. Why? Because today, in the global arena, America and China are much stronger, right? When President Trump entered the White House 9 months ago, the whole world changed. And since April, so since 7 months ago, that global Cold War, that age of geoeconomics pitting China against America is accelerating. The stakes are higher, and the accelerating rivalry between Washington and Beijing is sucking away the oxygen from the rest of the world. So it means that Britain and Europe are weaker, but even in the global South, in relative terms, everything is relative. Brazil and South Africa are relatively weaker, but they like to believe that the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and BRICS Plus, they like to believe that this is the global South, and there is a third way, right? And that third way between, let's say, capitalism and communism is the message that the global South can give to the world. In reality, because we live in the age of geoeconomics, the only issue which really matters now is the technological financial rivalry between China and America. It's accelerating. Once again, it's sucking away the oxygen from the rest of the world. So today, a Brazilian, South African initiative backed by the socialist government of Spain, today it's not very important. with all due respect for them. And even though South Africa, which is a country, by the way, I love South Africa and I love Brazil, but I have to be realistic. Their voice is difficult to be heard today because everyone is obsessed by that rivalry between America and China.
And China.
And you know why? It's a rivalry across sectors, economic sectors, high tech, AI, microchips, rare earth minerals, advanced infrastructure. In all these fields, South Africa and Spain, their weight is zero. Brazil is kind of a little higher in the pecking order, but they don't weight much in that new great game, right? That techno-industrial rivalry. If anything, Russia and Saudi Arabia and South Korea are more important.
Really?
So for the likes of Xi Jinping in Beijing and Donald Trump in the White House, if anything, they care about the opinion within limits of Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Singapore, Russia, much more than that of South Africa or Spain or Brazil.
Okay, so how can developing nations ensure that reforms to the global debt system actually shift power, not just messaging?
It's going to be very difficult and very complicated. And very briefly, why? In my personal opinion, because in that new era, the number one concern of these governments, including, Spain, South Africa, Brazil, is economic growth. Economic growth, number one. Number two, debt. So debt is important, but it's below economic growth. They are obsessed by economic growth. Once again, the Chinese and the Americans are sucking away the oxygen. So the economic growth of emerging markets is going to be slower than planned initially. And of course, debt is high. And I think income inequality is third. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fixing income inequality is number 3 or number 4 on the list. And if you do too much, so if you are Brazil or South Africa, if you do too much to fix income inequality, what will happen? Mechanically, you will slow down economic growth in your country and you will increase the debt level. Why? Because in this day and age, capital is mobile. So if you are, for example, increasing taxes on South African and Brazilian companies, if you're increasing taxes on rich people in Brazil and South Africa because you want to fix inequality, guess what will happen? These rich people, these big companies, they will go elsewhere. They will go to Argentina. They will go to Egypt. They will go to Morocco, And I think that's the problem. It's very difficult and very complicated.
Okay. So the FTPs argues that inequality is a policy choice. What choices must change and who will resist?
It's a difficult policy choice because two things you can do. You can tax the rich in your own country. So you're going to say, okay, these big companies in Rio, Sao Paulo, Cape Town, they're super rich. We in Brasilia, we in the capital of Pretoria. So we in Pretoria, we in Brasilia are going to go to Johannesburg, Cape Town, Rio, Sao Paulo, where the money is. We're taxing the rich people and the rich company. Then you can tell the Westerners, you can tell, the rich countries from Europe and the US and the World Bank and the IMF, we in the South, we think we have a bad deal. You guys in Europe and America, you have it easy, you have all the money. Please be nice to us and fix the debt issue but that in this day and age, it won't work because in this day and age, the age of geoeconomics, the West itself, Europe, Britain, America, they have economic problems.
They are indebted.
And they are in a race against China. So they don't have money, even if they wanted to. They don't have money or time.
They have priorities.
To help the South. So it's going to be very difficult and very complicated to fix equality.
Yes. Can the green transition become a vehicle for shared prosperity rather than deepening divides?
Here, I love the concept of green transition, but I think here, these are empty words.
Again.
Why are empty words? Because,
You're not optimistic about anything, Mr. May.
No, and here Brazil is smart. Brazil is very smart because the Brazilians at the COP summit today and yesterday and the day before were under pressure by the Europeans. And the Europeans were telling them, we have to transition faster. Why don't you in South America and Saudi Arabia and Egypt transition faster? And I think the Brazilians were very smart. They said, no, listen, we are a developing nation. We are blessed with natural gas and oil. I wish, me as a Brazilian, I wish we had gold and diamond, but we only have that. We only have, natural gas and oil. And we need to pump up the gas because our people are poor. Yes. And the only way for our people to get money is to benefit from fossil fuels. So sorry, Mr. Macron, sorry, Mr. Macron, sorry, Madame Ursula von der Leyen, but you do the green transition first. You don't impose your ideology abruptly on the global south. And here, I think the messaging from Brazil was good. It is important progressively to transition to a greener economy, but we should not put all the weight on the shoulder of the Arabs and the Latin Americans and the Asians, because that would not be fair, right?
Right.
So I think, here Europe can take the lead, but it should not impose aggressively its constraints and norms onto the global south. So here, I support Lula, and he's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. How should the global south leverage new alliances, BRICS plus AU and the G20, to rewrite rules dominated by the global north?
So here, once again, BRICS and EU, I don't think so, but here, yes. In the global south, you have pivot nations. What are pivot nations? They are countries with an exceptional geographic position and primary resources like natural gas, like oil, but more importantly, rare earth minerals, platinum, gold. And so these pivot nations, what are they? South Africa, Brazil, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South Korea, they are pivot nations. Russia is a pivot nation. So yes, they will profit. Why will they profit? Because if there is a rivalry, and there is a rivalry between America and China, and it's accelerating, they will be courted like a beautiful girl, right? Yes. So the pivot nations will be courted both by the American Prince Charming and by the Chinese Prince Charming. Okay. And what they can do, these beautiful girls, the Brazilian, Egyptian, Saudis, they can say, you know what? I'm going to be neutral. I am not going to marry you, but we're going to flirt. And so it's not a bad position to be in when you are courted by two giants. And China and America are giants. And they will have to court Egypt, Brazil, Russia, because they want rare earth minerals. They want the geographic position.
I get your point, but what are your expectations in the upcoming period? Realistic expectations, of course.
Winners and losers. So I think the accelerating race between Beijing and Washington means we will have more losers and more winners. So more countries are going to become poorer, much poorer, but you will have a few winners. And the top winners, I think, are countries like South Korea, Singapore, and Russia. They'll be like really on the top because everyone needs them. And that's why Trump wants to finish the war in Ukraine. It's not because he likes Russia or he likes Putin. And I think the European, the EU, and British experts, many of them are idiots. They don't understand what's going on here. So Trump is not there to please Putin. He couldn't care less. He's there because the geographic position of Russia is vital for America in the geo-economic rivalry with China. Russia has vast amounts of rare earth minerals, and Russia is the key nation for what we call the Northwest Passage. So the passage connecting New York and Montreal to the North Pole. And so via the North Pole, from New York and Montreal, you will have giant boats, shipping boats, connecting North America to Europe and Russia, going through the North Pole. And Russia controls the Northwest Passage. Russia is a huge country. It's like a continent. And Trump is right. In that new Cold War with China, he needs at least to be certain that Russia will remain neutral. It is not in America's interest to push Singapore or Russia or Egypt or Brazil into the arms of the Chinese. And so what Trump is doing in a very cold-blooded, neo-realist way is very smart.
Well, finally and briefly, could Johannesburg mark a geopolitical turning point, a new architecture of global governance, in your own opinion?
Here, I'm less optimistic because, these terms, global governance, etc. They are from the ancient world, the old world. That world died in February of this year. So you could say it died in February of this year when Trump entered the White House, or it died in April of this year when Trump started the global tariffs realignment or war. And the new era is about selfishness, economic nationalism, industrial nationalism at home in your own country. So if that's the new foundation of the new era, industrial and economic nationalism, it doesn't go well with global governance. Because to have a system where people believe in nice and gentle global governance, you have to have a majority of people, of important nations, who believe in it. And I'm sorry, it's not Emmanuel Macron, not Emmanuel Macron or Ursula von der Leyen who are going to build the New World Order. That New World Order will be built by China and America. So I think global governance will be very difficult to enforce, and the norms are going to be fewer. We're going to have fewer norms, and they will be less global. They will be, by definition, more selfish, more nationalist.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Frizley, for the critical discussion. Well, from New York to Johannesburg, the message is clear. Power is shifting, and fairness is the battleground. This has been In Focus. Until next episode, good night.